He ruled without a crown. He destroyed queens. He rewrote the laws of England. But on a grim summer morning in 1540, the man who once commanded a king's favor found himself kneeling at the scaffold, praying not for mercy, but for a quick death. His name was Thomas Cromwell. And this is the real, brutal story of how England's most powerful commoner was slowly and savagely brought down by the same king he served. Thomas Cromwell was born around 1485 in Putney, a rough riverside village outside London. His father, Walter Cromwell, was a blacksmith and tavern owner with a reputation for drinking and brawling. There was no nobility in his blood, no royal schooling, no wealth, just fists, fire, and survival. As a teenager, Thomas ran away from home. According to some stories, he fought as a mercenary in Italy. Others say he worked for bankers in Florence and merchants in Antwerp. Wherever he went, he learned one thing: power doesn't belong to kings. It belongs to those who understand money, law, and people. By the early 1520s, Cromwell returned to England, armed with street smarts, foreign languages, and legal brilliance. He joined the service of Cardinal Thomas Wolsey, England's most powerful man after the king. Wolsey noticed Cromwell's ruthless efficiency. But when Wolsey fell from King Henry VIII's favor, most of his men abandoned him. Not Cromwell. He remained loyal, and then skillfully transferred his service directly to Henry. Cromwell was rising, one body at a time. Henry VIII was desperate for a male heir. His wife, Catherine of Aragon, had failed to produce one. Cromwell masterminded the legal and religious chaos that led to Henry's break from the Catholic Church, the English Reformation, and eventually, the king's marriage to Anne Boleyn. When Anne too failed to give Henry a son, Cromwell engineered her downfall with accusations of adultery and incest. She was executed. The blood of queens was on Cromwell's hands, and the king rewarded him with titles, land, and unimaginable power. By the late 1530s, Thomas Cromwell was Earl of Essex, Lord Great Chamberlain, Vicegerent of the Church, essentially the second most powerful man in England. He restructured the kingdom's finances, dissolved hundreds of monasteries, and made enemies in every noble family. But Cromwell didn't care. He believed in two things: the supremacy of the king and the ruthlessness of survival. Those who opposed him were arrested, tortured, and executed. In 1540, Cromwell arranged a political marriage between Henry and Anne of Cleves, a German princess. But when Henry met her, he was disgusted. He called her a Flanders mare and refused to consummate the marriage. The failure embarrassed the king, and he blamed Cromwell. The whispers began. Old enemies smelled blood. On June 10, 1540, during a council meeting, Cromwell was suddenly arrested for treason and heresy. He was dragged out, still wearing the Order of the Garter, the king's highest honor, pinned to his chest. His enemies, like the Duke of Norfolk and Bishop Gardiner, celebrated. The man who had orchestrated so many executions was now in the Tower himself. Cromwell spent weeks in the Tower of London, isolated and uncertain. He wrote desperate letters to the king, begging for forgiveness, offering his life's work, even weeping over his own mistakes. Henry, who once called him the most faithful servant a prince ever had, stayed silent. There was no real trial, no defense. Cromwell was condemned by Act of Attainder, a legal death sentence passed by Parliament without evidence or hearing. His crimes were vague: heresy, corruption, treason. His true crime? Losing the king's favor. On July 28, 1540, Cromwell was led to Tower Hill. He wore a plain black robe. A crowd had gathered, the same kind of crowd that once cheered when he sent others to die. He prayed aloud. He confessed loyalty to the king. He asked for forgiveness and a quick death. But the axe was dull. The executioner struck once and missed. The second blow gashed his jaw. Blood poured. It took multiple strikes to sever his head. The crowd was horrified. It was a brutal, clumsy end, undeserving even for a traitor, but fitting for a man who had orchestrated so many beheadings himself. The same day Cromwell died, Henry VIII married his fifth wife, the 19-year-old Catherine Howard. The irony was lost on no one. Cromwell's body was buried in an unmarked grave. His enemies rejoiced. But within months, Henry would regret his decision. Catherine Howard would be executed too. The cycle of betrayal never ended. Thomas Cromwell's name was blackened for centuries. Some called him a tyrant, a butcher, a destroyer of churches. Others called him a reformer, a genius, a man who gave birth to modern England. His fingerprints are on the Reformation, the legal system, and the very bones of British power. His death was brutal, but his legacy remains. He was not born noble. He never wore a crown. But for a time, Thomas Cromwell controlled the fate of kings, queens, and nations. And when he fell hard, with no trial, no mercy, and no one left to save him. Because in the court of Henry VIII, loyalty was always temporary, and power was always fatal.